Boosh. Okay, so let's talk about game mechanics. So the first one we're going to talk about is that in Pokemon Snap that we have what's called photo trigger events. So you notice that whenever you have your cursor, your lens, what do you want to call it? Whenever you're pointing at a Pokemon and you're about to take a picture of them, whenever you have it directly centered over their body, you have the red dot, right? Sometimes we call those red dot pictures. And you'll see that the name appears and you'll hear that like the ding whenever you take a picture of it. What that does is that technically it tries to trigger a photo event. So if we take a picture of this Lapras, if we take a centered red dot picture of that Lapras, then another one is going to spawn later on. So by taking a picture at this point, something later is going to happen. This happens only a couple times. Most of the time it doesn't do anything. The only times it happens is with Diglett and with Lapras and Signs. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think it's just those two. So let's say we move up forward. You'll see that we have one Lapras. That one will always spawn. But there's another one that's going to spawn right here. There it is. Okay. If we take a picture of this one, a third one will spawn later on. So let's go ahead and zoom forward. Get you out of the way. Come over here. And then we have one. That's the original. That's the second one. And then we have a third Lapras. Come on. There we go. So this Lapras right here will not spawn if you don't take two pictures. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this again without taking any pictures. And I'll show you. So if we don't take a picture of this Lapras here. This normal Lapras over here, this is the first one that's super far away. I'll zoom past it, it didn't have time to spawn. I'll slow down over here, and you'll see. I have the power of God anime on my side. So this guy in the background will always spawn, but this guy over here won't spawn. So he never spawned there. Okay. Let's see if the other guy spawns. So the original one spawns, the second one doesn't spawn, and the third one doesn't spawn either. That's because we didn't trigger the photo events. So that happens, again, in two places. It's mainly with Lapras and with Diglett. Those are the two important ones that you have to remember. So you have to take a picture, and then it'll move over to the next spot, take another picture, it'll move on again. That's how the red dot pictures work. You'll hear it either red dots or photo trigger events, stuff like that. Those are the terms we use. But you should that's what we're talking about, is that you have to take a directly centered picture for it to move on to the next thing. Okay. So, speaking of moving on to the next thing, the next mechanic we're going to talk about, this one's kind of a minor thing, but just so we have it clear. Oh, Grimer, thank you. I actually forgot all about Grimer. Thank you, Levon. Yeah, that we also need to take a picture of Grimer so that another Grimer spawns later, which is in better position to get a good picture and evolve into Muck. Because there's another one we can do, but it sucks. So, Grimer is another photo trigger event. Totally forgot about Grimer. Unlocking stuff. So, in this game, there are a couple things that you need to do to progress to the next area. So, like, in order for us to unlock Tunnel, we have to take 6 pictures in Beach. We do that automatically, because we're just getting as many points as we can. But the next one besides that is Apples, which is 24,000 points. So, if we're in Beach for the first time, we cannot get 24,000 points with more than 6. So okay, hang on. Let's rephrase that. So let's say you get more than 6 pictures, and you get more than 24,000 points. You can't unlock 2 things at once. You can't unlock a new stage and an item. So the way it works is that stages take precedent. So if you were to do both of those things, you would only unlock Tunnel, and then you'd have to go into Tunnel and then submit a picture and then come back out, and then you can get Apples. That is important because technically you can get 24,000 points on Beach, but we don't do that because we'd have to go a little slower. But it also doesn't really help us in any case because we still have to go into Tunnel and take a picture. It also happens in the Pester area, or sorry, when you go out of Volcano, you unlock River and Pester Balls. You can actually have more points than needed to get Pester Balls, and you will still only unlock River, have to go into River and take a picture before you can unlock both things. So I don't think you have to be in Tunnel to unlock apples. I don't think that's the case. Okay, and last but not least, let's talk about lag reduction. So what's interesting about the N64 is that the hardware isn't that powerful. So how it manages having a lot of things on screen is that if something is not visibly on screen, like see here, you can look to the left, and that's where the mountains are starting to end right there, a little ridge right there, and on the right side the flowers are here on screen, but Pikachu isn't on screen anymore. Pikachu's back here, right? Because we don't, when he's not physically on the screen, or yeah, when he's not actually on the screen, he doesn't get rendered. So like right now, these Pidgeys are not being rendered. Like they still exist, but they're not being rendered by the hardware, which means that since they're not on screen and they're not being rendered, the Nintendo doesn't have to process those. So the less things that it has to process, the faster and the smoother it'll run. It'll only run at 30 frames per second, but you can make it a smooth 30 frames per second instead of like 27 by keeping things off screen. So you'll see a lot of runners will look up into the sky, mainly because if we're not looking at anything in particular, we're just trying to get rid of as much stuff as we can so that there's less stuff on screen. So lag reduction is important because on every stage it saves several seconds. So over the course of the run it saves about a minute or two. So you'll have to either learn, or we usually learn audio cues, or maybe like look at Skybox visual cues, stuff like that. So I know on Volcano there's like a rim that goes around or the sky. I don't know, it's weird. But like this area here, there's like a line for when it goes to like this upper sky to like the middle sky. And so you can look at those for visual cues, stuff like that. Look at clouds. So okay. Is there anything else we need to talk about with lag reduction? Oh, particle effects. Let's go to... So another thing that causes lag is particle effects. So one place you can see it really easily is if we go to River here. Over here we'll see Vileplume. And Vileplume will emit a cloud of smoke every time you hit her with something. So if we just start, like if you look, it's not terribly smooth right now. It's not too bad though. But if you start hitting Vileplume, all these things come up, you start to see we're starting to drop heavy frames. But as soon as you look away, it's back to normal. Look back at it, and we're back to chugging frames again. So one thing is we try to keep particle effects off screen, try to keep as much as we can off screen. If you can use apples or pesters, we usually try to use apples because they don't make a particle effect. They still have a thing on screen, but they don't do that cloud. That cloud is way worse for frames than the apple is. So just keep that in mind. If something is not physically on screen, if you can't see it on your TV, then it isn't being rendered, and that is important. Okay.